Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week on 1029 The Game and the Broad Street South Network. So glad to talk with you. Exciting championship Sunday around the National Football League. So much to cover. And the quarterback carousel, we started kicking it off last week, and we'll go over that this week. It says Kevin Midgette up on your screen, but that Kevin had to be called away. Ryan Neff comes off the bench. He's ready to pinch hit. Some of my old Philly fans remember Dell Unser. He's coming in off the bench. Greg Gross, maybe he's going to get a base hit with the base loaded. Looking forward to talking with Ryan Neff as we go around the league. Not many games left. It's crazy. This season is flying by. And I don't really know what I'm going to do myself. I know there's Senior Bowl coming up. I guess maybe I'll have to watch some UFL. That's the USFL and the XFL smushed together. I don't know. I'll find something. I heard arena football's coming back, Ryan. So, there's always much football to talk about. The NFL never sleeps, like I always say. And the show will continue. Crazy week, as I looked at my picks to start the season. Every year, Rich Quinones and we pick preseason picks, and I said it's going to be the Niners versus the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. This is all the way back in August, September. And then I went against myself. I somehow convinced myself that the Ravens were the new Ravens and that the Lions were the new kids on the block. And I picked the Ravens and Lions. I said, you know what, forget my old picks. I'm going to go with these guys. And man, was I wrong. I guess we'll start with near and dear to Ryan's heart. First game, just so everybody knows, he is a Chiefs fan. If you don't remember that from earlier season, and the Chiefs though went into Baltimore. Second time on the road for Patrick Mahomes. They had their first game at home where they took care of business against the lowly Steelers, and then last week they just dominated the Bills just enough to get out of there with a victory. But this week they go to Baltimore, and a lot of people are saying, all right, they're going against the number one seed. The Ravens have allowed only 16.5 points per game, and that defense has been just dominant. But they went in there, Ryan, with no fear. And I just thought that the Chiefs had the composure. They had the veteran leadership. And there's always a saying in sports, act like you've been there before. And the Chiefs had been there before, and they showed it. Patrick Mahomes, he looked like the MVP. 30 of 39, 241 yards, no interceptions, one TD, moving the chains when he needs to, running the football. And you can't talk about this game without talking about my game ball winner for this week. Travis Kelce. I know everybody's tired of him and Taylor Swift. But on the field, 11 targets, 11 catches, 116 yards, one TD. And as I said, the Ravens just self-imploded. Fumbles at very key moments of the game. Lamar Jackson had one, and then Zay Flowers at the goal line. That just pretty much shut the door on that team. And then later on, Lamar Jackson throws a pick that I couldn't believe was in triple coverage. So, Ryan, what did you see when you were watching this game? Obviously, as a Chiefs fan, you're happy, but what did you see in terms of these two teams?
Well, I mean, one showed up, showed out, the other one didn't. So, look, the Ravens got away from what they did the best all year. That was run the football. And they were the number one rushing team in the NFL all year long. They ran the ball 16 times for 81 yards. Gus Edwards had 3 carries. Justice Hill had 3 carries. Zay Flowers carried it twice. Lamar 8. That's all you need to know. Yeah. And they turned it over.
The running backs 6 carries for 23 yards.
Yeah,
Chiefs cut you off, but
that's okay. Chiefs ran it 32 times for 89 yards. Now it's not a lot of yards, but when you run it 32 times and you control the clock, I said special teams. Whoever won the turnover battle and won the rushing battle was going to win this football game. And look, Chiefs played lights out the first half. The offense was trying to give it away. They couldn't put together any drives in the second half. Baltimore stopped them on numerous occasions. But again, Lamar Jackson, when he gets to the playoffs, just when the lights shine brightest, he sort of fizzles. And it was almost Lloyd like he wanted to say, I want to beat this team throwing the football because I want to be able to say, we beat them throwing the football. And that's not what you do. It's not what you do. You can't change it. He tried to do too much. They got away from the running game, and it bit him. Because look, in the second half, Kansas City didn't score. They were just, I don't know what it was. Again, I said Kansas City's defense would have to carry them all year long, and they had to carry them in this game again in the second half.
Yeah, and the Chiefs, as you said, come out clicking on all cylinders. Mahomes was 12 for 12 to start this game. Pinpoint, he was surgical. And their first two drives, they go right down and they put 14 points on the board. They add a field goal at the end, and they go in the locker room 17-7. And I kind of was like, all right, 17-7 is nice, but we know Kansas City, the magic number is 21 or more points. So when they've scored 21 or more points, they're 10-0 this season. And as you said, they kind of, not that they took their foot off the gas, but the Ravens defense was keeping the Ravens in this game, and they were getting the Chiefs off the field. The Chiefs punted 6 times, and they gave the Ravens their opportunities. But as I said, they just couldn't get out of their own way, whether it was penalties, which they had 8 penalties for 95 yards, and the Chiefs only had 3 for 30. Obviously, some of my buddies are texting me saying, oh, the refs are in Mahomes' pocket. They want to have the Chiefs. They want to have the – no. The Ravens were committing dumb penalties. You know, that taunting penalty by Zay Flowers, he's almost – I think he was around a 5-yard line. Why do you need to spike the ball over the guy and then stand over him and talk some crap? Act like you've been there before, and it just hurt the team overall. And there was a lot of pushing and shoving and yapping. And, I know Harbaugh, that's not his game from talking with him from his years when he was the Eagles special teams coach. He preaches control around his players, but they just got away from themselves. I think it was emotional atmosphere. The home stadium, Baltimore as a city had not hosted that type of game since 1971, and their fans were fired up. But they just got away from, as you said, from who they were. They not running the football and establishing it just hurt this team. And when I look at Lamar Jackson, you're right. He's very tentative. He's 20 of 37 in the pocket. He's back there dancing around, looking for somebody to get open. Well, the DaCosta and the front office have not done him any help in terms of who they put around him. Mark Andrews, yes, he gave it a go, but I think that leg injury that he cost him miss a lot of the season was still bothering him. But there was really, other than Zay Flowers, they did not have any other of those receivers step up. So why not lean on some of those other guys? Gus Edwards, as you were saying, and Dalvin Cook, I thought he was going to be my X factor. He stepped up in the end of the Texans game. They signed him. He's a guy, a veteran guy. Why not give him an opportunity? I didn't even see him on a field. I don't know if he was dressed for this game. But, you called out a big thing, Brian. I look at Lamar Jackson and his leadership. Presumptive MVP. This is going to be his number 2 MVP. But that's a regular season award. And this was his chance to kind of tell everybody, shut up about me. I'm an elite level quarterback. Obviously, he's a top 10 guy, but he's not the guy you want with the game on the line. Now he's 2-4 in the playoffs. I think he's 2-2 at home. Actually, he's 1-2 at home.
Yeah. Yep.
Because actually 1-3 because he was 0-2 coming into the playoffs. So he won one, he lost one. So now he's 1-3 in Baltimore. You thought that number 1 seed would help propel his team, but when you look at the Ravens, and we'll keep looking at their side of the ball just for a minute, what can the Ravens do in terms of cleaning this thing up? Where do they go from here? Nobody wants to see them become, Blake Bortles Jacksonville Jaguars, the team that got so close, and they almost beat the Patriots in that championship game, and then eventually the team imploded. Can the Ravens make it back after this dramatic loss?
Well, here's the thing, Lloyd. Kansas City Chiefs came in the game, and Steve Spagnuolo said, "You know what? We are not going to let Baltimore run on us like Buffalo did. And if Lamar Jackson can beat us passing the football, then kudos to you."
Yeah,
As far as the offseason goes, look, Gus Edwards is serviceable. Justice Hill is serviceable. I guess Dalvin Cook is serviceable. But they don't have a stud running back. And they still led the league in rushing. So I think they need to go out and get a Derrick Henry type. I don't know the free agents running back wise going into the offseason, but Zay Flowers is a stud, obviously. Nelson Aguilar, uh, Odell Beckham Jr. is over the hill at this point. Now you have his father coming out, talking all
oh,
that
it's
smack
terrible.
that he was. It's terrible. Um, he didn't have his crutch, which was Mark Andrews, for like 10 weeks. It was a big loss for them. Likely did a nice job stepping in. But and you talked about the defense, Lloyd. This defense wasn't the same as it was earlier in the year. They started to tail off a little bit. Now, do they have the nucleus defense wise? Absolutely. But they're going to have to go after a stud running back, a number one running back, because I don't think Gus Edwards is really truly a number one running back. And two, other than Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews, if he's healthy, you've got to get a complimentary receiver. Mike Evans, maybe. I don't know what kind of receivers are. I haven't checked the free agent list, but do I think that they can back there? Yes, but again, it's like a broken record. Okay, beating Houston is one thing. Trying to beat Kansas City in the AFC title game is another thing. Um,
Right.
we've seen Cincinnati beat Kansas City in the AFC title game. Why? Because they had a great football team. They had a balanced football team. Uh, New England, Cincinnati, they've had balanced football teams. This team is run heavy. Run the football, control the clock, turn it over to our defense. And again, I think they can make it back, but you know how some teams are, Lloyd.
Yeah,
A
and
loss
everything's
a
going to
loss like this
change.
is devastating. Yeah,
Yeah, and you got Mike McDonald, their defense coordinator. He's in line for. There's two openings left. They're talking about him, maybe Seattle, maybe. I think the Washington gig's kind of a done deal, but we'll see about that. But McDonald may not be there again. Todd Monken has got some work to do. That's our offense coordinator. I don't know if it was him calling the plays or who it was, but it just was not clicking. And when they did have a big play, they shot themselves in the foot. And their defense did a nice job holding Kansas City 17 points, but early on they were just having a lot of difficulty. And I think they got pretty tired at the end of the game. You had Roquan Smith, you had Patrick Queen, two all pros in the middle, along with Hamilton, the safety who were playing well early. And then they kind of wore down as the game went along. I think that's why Kelsey was able to just beat them over and over the middle on key plays when they needed to. So Eric Acosta, their general manager, and I know Ozzie Newsome's still there. He's supposed to be retired, but he still works with the front office. They got to figure out what to do. Dobbins obviously hurt again at the running back position. They put a high draft pick into him, but I just don't know what kind of guy he is. And then you mentioned a very key name in Derrick Henry. He's going to be a free agent. I think the Titans wished him goodbye. You could see that in that last game that he probably played his last game there. I think Jacobs as well for the Raiders. He may be available. So work to your strengths. I think I agree with you. Try to build around that running game. I know it's not the new exciting NFL and people think it's boring and everything, but the Ravens got to do that. So
and
when
here's
when I look at yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I was gonna add. Look, it was 17-10. They still had a chance to tie it. You can't be throwing the ball in the triple coverage when you're driving the football, mixing it up. And Lamar has to make. He's been in the league long enough that look. I'm back here. I see the receiver, but there's triple coverage. Either find somebody else or take off with the football. You cannot be making decisions like that in an AFC championship game.
Yeah, and he against Buff, against the Texans, he ran 11 times for 100 yards, and there were several times yesterday. I was like, "Run, take off!" There were opportunities for him to run it, and it's almost like he wants to prove a lot of people wrong in situation. That I'm a winner in the playoffs. That I'm don't call me a running back. All this. But in the end, you got to do what it takes to win the game. Work to your strengths, and that's what Todd Monken should have did too as well. But everybody's focused on the Ravens. Did they cough it up? And I think the biggest play obviously was that Zay Flowers fumble at the goal line. He was trying to make a play, but you can't put the ball out there. And this is where we'll start talking about the other side of the coin. You have to tip your cap to that Chiefs defense. That defense is attacking. Steve Spagnuolo, the architect of that old Giants team that beat the perfect Patriots in 2007, he's done a great job with this group. You could see he knew everything that the Ravens were trying to do out there. You have Bolton and the rest of those linebackers flying around. Reed at the safety position seemed to be everywhere as well. McDuffie, what a great young find. They got him out of the University of Washington. This young guy, he can cover, he can hit. And then defensive line wise, Karlaftis, you know, didn't think much of him coming out of Purdue, but that young man can get some heat after the quarterback. And then Chris Jones was making plays as well. So, Lamar's going to be the spectacular guy. That play where he had the completion to himself showed the speed and the athleticism of him. But in terms of just getting it done, he just didn't. He just didn't. And in that pass you were talking about into triple coverage, Isaiah Likely, there was no chance of that getting caught. And it just showed, okay, that it was just not the Ravens' day. I know their fans were out there early and they thought it was their day. But when you look at the Chiefs, Andy Reid, a guy who I covered here in Philadelphia, it's so funny, Ryan, because he's not the same guy I covered all those years in Philly. He's learned, he's adapted. And of course, I think having the best young quarterback in the National Football League, uh, he should be the MVP probably. But Mahomes is just incredible, and he could tell Mahomes wanted it. He wanted to prove he could go on the road and win in the situations. I also know that he's been 6 times in a row. He's been to the championship game, and as we said, he's been there before. The players have been there before. The whole staff, and they knew exactly what to do. So, what are you thinking of this Chiefs team? I know as we move into the Super Bowl, not this week, but the following week. We'll talk more about that, previewing that. But what do you see when you look at this Chiefs team and that dominance from yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, like I said in the preseason, I said I was worried about the offense, and it proved to be true. I said all season long, and you can ask Angel or anybody that I was really high on the defense. There is Super Bowl caliber defense. Defense would have to carry them. They did again. I know that Kansas City got out to the hot start offensively. But again, it's about ball control. Look, they ran the ball 32 times, which I was pleased to
Yep.
see. Not a whole lot of rushing yards, but when you pound the rock that many times and you're effective at it, you're going to wear the defense down. So Mahomes, again, spectacular. I know he only had the one touchdown pass, but it didn't matter. When they were controlling the clock and they turned it over to the defense. So I was pleased to see it. Lloyd, I knew they'd beat the Dolphins in the freezing temperatures. Miami didn't want any part of it. And then last week, again, nip and tuck with the Bills. Nobody gave him a shot against Buffalo. I picked I picked Kansas City to win that game last week just because Gabe Davis was out. And then this week, I actually picked Baltimore. Just from the standpoint of, I just thought Baltimore at home, chance to go to the Super Bowl. And of course, I was made an idiot out of again by the Kansas City Chiefs. What I'm really surprised to see is that Rashee Rice is now, I would consider, a number one receiver to complement Travis Kelce. That kid week in and week out delivers. He plays hard. He keeps his mouth shut. He just wants to play football. So just another weapon for defenses to think about. And look, San Francisco's not going to be easy, Lloyd. They're not. They've got unfinished business playing the Chiefs. The last time they made the Super Bowl, they want to try and you know make amends for the fourth quarter collapse. But I like where the Chiefs are right now. They're just really they can beat you in a multitude of different ways.
Yeah, they're pushed position very well, and as you said, the playoff tenets that we always talk about, winning the turnover battle, which they did. Uh, they had an interception and they had two lost fumbles, so it was three turnovers to none. And then in terms of the clock, Kansas City dominated 37 and a half minutes to only 22 and a half minutes for the Ravens. And the Ravens were not sustaining their drives. When you look at their third down percentage, it tells the story of this game. 3 for 11 on third downs. They just could not convert them. And there were a couple situations where Lamar made a throw and then he had a guy drop it and they just weren't coming through. And the Chiefs, they just grounded out, and then their special teams came into play where Andy Reid was like, you know what, I'll punt it down there, and then I'll let this defense and Spags and his group get the job done. And that's what they did. And I thought Lamar Jackson was pressing at certain points in this game. And you know, you hate to boil it down so simplistically, but typically the team with the best quarterback is going to win in the National Football League. And who's going to bet against Patrick Mahomes, especially in a playoff situation? The guy's becoming that Brady-esque level, where people are like, "Oh, he's so good, I hate him." You know what I mean? But they're a dominant team. I actually just appreciate and enjoy watching him play. A lot of people I know, my sons, I watch the game. They're like, "I'm tired of him." I want somebody new, but he's a generational talent, and you're just like, wow. And then I'll throw Kelsey in there. You know, he's up there with Gronk in terms of tight end performances and in the postseason. Early this season, he had struggles, as did the whole team. I know you and I talked a lot early in the season where they just were struggling in terms of dropping passes. They even had MVS making some catches out there. So, this Chiefs team knows its time. So what? That they were 11-6 in the regular season. They won a division when they had to, and they're just taking care of business. So, anything else you want to say in terms of the AFC Championship game?
No, I'll just say again, it's almost like Kansas City. It's like us against the world this year. Um, People thought they had him down, and again, you alluded to it. All the distractions. There's rumors out there that have been floating around the last month that Andy Reid might retire after this year, win or lose. So I just think they've used all this as a rallying cry. And again,
Right.
I like where they're at, and they've proven me wrong. They proved me wrong last week. They proved me wrong this week. So again, well balanced team heading into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and they proved me wrong too. I believed in them early in the season. I said they're going to make the Super Bowl against the Niners, and I had them as first repeat champion in the National Football League since 03-04. I kind of bounced off of that as the season went along, just because they had a lot of struggles, and you saw some things you didn't like in terms of the team. But they did have some injuries at bad times in the season, but they've stayed the course, and I'm not going to bet against them this time. I know I'll break it down in the next couple of weeks. But you know what? I'm going to stick with my preseason pick, and uh, they'll probably have me be right, because they just, I can't believe Vegas was making them underdogs in these games. So it like you said, when they're the underdogs like us against the world, they're going on the road, they're feeling good, and they just taking care of business. And as I said, Kelsey gets my game ball. It's just amazing. He had 11 targets. He caught every single ball. It was just like it was the over my dead body game for him. He
Yeah.
made sure, and on key situations, third down, fourth down, Mahomes was looking for him. And the Ravens had to know, like, why don't we bracket cover this guy? Because you saw all season teams doing that. There were games where teams made sure he only got 3 catches, and they took him out of it because they didn't trust the other receivers. But he wanted to get open, and he did. And when he caught it, he made some difficult catches, diving and just dominant. You could see his exuberation as he won too.
Yeah, and he's, to be quite honest with you, Lloyd, he's almost playing like this is his last hurrah. Uh, I hate to say it like that because, I know his brother's thinking about retiring, but look, Kelsey's getting up there in age. I know he's probably playing hurt, as most everybody is, but it almost seems like it's his last hurrah. He's playing every down like it's his last, and I haven't seen that
Yeah,
out of him this year. So
yeah, and I know he said he's leaning towards coming back, but you never know. If he wins, and we all know the Taylor Swift conversations is out there, and it seems to be real. I'll just put it that way. That relationship. This is not entertainment tonight here, but you know, maybe he does decide if they win it all that it's time to step away. And obviously, the Kelsey brothers, um, they're going to do very well off the field. They
yeah,
already are. Their podcast is up there, and they're everywhere. They're on SNL and all over the place. So if he wanted to get into commercials or in the booth, whatever those two wanted to do, it's all there for the taking. So
yeah.
great win for the Kansas City Chiefs. Congratulations to Andy Reid. And it's still Philadelphia Eagles West, in my opinion. There's so many people with Philadelphia ties on there. Ryan, I got a kick out of. They showed I forget which staff it was. It had John Harbaugh
I
and
saw
Andy
that.
Reid on there. Well, Todd Pinkston, who was a skinny receiver that would not block, he's the Chiefs running backs coach. So, I don't know. Maybe he knows something about running harder than he did as a player because
Yeah,
we know Pacheco.
yeah.
Pacheco, and you got to tip your cap to that young man. And the offensive line didn't have Thuney, but Pacheco did a great job. 24 rushes, 68 yards, and 1 TD. He had a big toe injury that he fought through all week, and he had just a dominant game as well. So again, kudos to the Chiefs, and we'll see them in Las Vegas. You're listening to Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game in the Broadstreet South Network. I'm joined by Ryan Neff. We are recapping the NFL championship round. We know that the Kansas City Chiefs will be the hosts, even though they're in the hated Raiders Stadium. They're going to be taking on the San Francisco 49ers. And now we got to break this game down now. Ryan, this was an interesting one because I was texting back and forth with our buddy Angel Martinez and Rich Quinones all during this game, and I'm like, oh, it's over. It's 24-7 at the half. The Lions got this thing, and when I was previewing this game earlier in the week, we talked about the over aggressiveness of Dan Campbell. And the thing is, uh, Rich Q was saying to me he thought that aggressiveness would help Campbell in terms of just playing with no fear and knocking off the conservative Niners. Well, it kind of backfired in my opinion. Both times, and I know his kicker's shaky, but Brad Holmes in the front office there with the Lions, maybe they should have did a better job getting a better kicker. If you don't trust Badgley to make those kicks, um, in a championship type game, he shouldn't be on the roster. But Campbell is a go for it guy, and in two key situations in the game, the Lions go for it on fourth down, and they fail both times. So you know you hate to boil it down to that, but do you think Campbell is going to learn from this situation, or what are you thinking there? I'm an old school guy. I was yelling at the TV, kick the ball. What were you thinking?
Just kick the field goal, man. It sort of harkened me back to the Falcons Patriots Super Bowl when the Falcons had a chance to kick a field goal, put the game out of reach. Matt Ryan took the sack, put him out of field goal range, and guess what? Patriots came back. And the first time he went for it on fourth down when he could have kicked the field goal, it sparked San Francisco's run. So in an NFC Championship game, man, you take the points. And I know his players came to his defense, and I know he says he has no regrets, but there's 67 years of futility on the line. And if you can't march your field goal kicker out there to kick the field goals to put you up, and who knows what would have happened, Lloyd? They kick a field goal, maybe your defense gets a stop. And now San
Right.
Francisco's really trying to battle from behind. So I don't like the decisions. I've seen it's been 50-50. But this was the time not to be aggressive. This was the time
Yeah.
just to take the points. So
Yeah.
throw the analytics out of it and whatnot, and just I just didn't like it.
Yeah, and earlier this season on my show we had Mike Tanner on, and he's a big analytics guy, and he used to work for Football Outsiders, and that whole analytics mindset has proliferated around the National Football League, and they say, as you said, the league average was about 50%. The the Lions actually were above the league average. They were 73% in the regular season on fourth down. So I think past results have kind of clouded Campbell's judgment. And as you said, everybody can say, "Oh, it's so old school. It's a Dick Vermeil type football." These old school guys, Tom Landry and those guys. Well, those guys are successful for a reason. You got the football and you boil it down, it's a game of possession. It's running the clock, it's not turning in a football over, and it's getting your points when you can. And now these kickers, most, I know Badgley's had his difficulty, but you look at like Butker and Tucker on the other side in the AFC Championship games. I mean, most of these kickers around the league, a lot of them are automatic, and that one kick, it was from what, about 48 yards. Yes, they're outdoors, but the weather seemed okay at the time. I know it's not dome conditions, but you have to trust your kicker, and that guy's got to make big kicks in big situations for a team. We've seen that over and over again with teams that are kind of underachievers like the Lions, where I think back to those Giants teams in '07 and 11. Lawrence Tynes made some big kicks for those teams, especially the one that he kicked in Green Bay. They said the ball was like a block of ice, but he kicks it and he gets it through, and it spurred his team to victory, and that's what you need. And the thing is with Campbell, he's going to say I'm going to do it again, but maybe it's a little arrogance or this or that, but they had this game and they coughed it up. You talk about that Falcons against the Patriots game when the Falcons were up, I think 27-3. It's the same kind of thing. Once you get a lead, just shorten the game. And it was unfortunate for them after that bad drop by Reynolds on the first fourth down, and the Niners score. Gibbs has that terrible fumble right behind that. And you're right, Big Mo was totally on the Niners side. They had momentum, and they just seemed to not stop. Later on, the Lions got lucky to tie it, but you knew at that point that the Niners just weren't going to be stopped. So, in terms of Campbell, do you think that this Lions team is you never know in the National Football League what's going to happen. And in that division, the Packers may step up. They're going to be there to challenge them. We're not sure about what the Vikings are doing. Um, but that division is going to get better. And as you said, you feel for those Lions fans. But in terms of the other side of the coin, this Niners team is tough. And you talk about this type of time in this season, it's about grit and it's about adjustment. So talk to me a little bit about what the Niners did to win this game.
I mean, they didn't panic. Um, Even when they were down 24-7, they stuck to the game plan. And that was running the football. I mean, Detroit ran it 29 times for 182 yards and 3 touchdowns. And again, San Francisco continued to run the football 33 times for 155 yards. McCaffrey went off 20 carries, 90 yards. He also cat for, again, the blueprint. We're down
Yeah.
24-7. We're not going to panic. All right, we're in a little bit of a bind, but let's stick to the game plan and let's work our way back. San Francisco stuck to their game plan. Detroit didn't. Yeah, we can talk about the drops. We can talk about a multitude of different things. But here's the thing. Jake Moody missed his first field goal attempt, but
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan didn't say, yeah, well, let's go for it on 4th and 7 or 4th and 5. No, he trotted Moody back out there and he made the last two field goals. So again, 49ers stick to the game plan. Detroit doesn't. That's just what San Francisco does. And look, for San Francisco, it looked bleak there for a while. I was the first one to say to myself, you know what? This game's not over. I even texted Angel, a lot of football to be played. We'll see what happens. And again,
Yeah.
we can pick this game apart, Lloyd, but you stop a team on 4th down when you go for it and you give the other team just a little bit of a crack, you better watch out. And that's
Right.
what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got Ben Johnson, a guy who everybody thinks is a presumptive favorite to get that Commander's job. He's the offense coordinator for the Lions. I just thought he had his foot on the gas in the first half. They were clicking on all cylinders as it had 17-point lead. But in the second half, they got away from running the football.
They did.
I know Gibbs had that bad fumble, but why not turn around and give it to Montgomery? Shorten the game to allow the possessions and not have the Niners have the time.
Yep.
And then when it all shakes out, time of possession, I always, everybody's like, oh, you harp on it too much. But the Niners held the ball for 32 minutes. And then you have conversely the Lions only had it for only a little under 28 minutes in this game. So they should have tried to keep the chains moving. I think they were a little too pass happy, and Goff, he ends up throwing the ball 41 times in this game. Yeah, that's not a sweet spot for him. You probably want to go about 30 times for him. You saw on that second 4th down play, he's just when you get a little pressure on him, he makes inexplicable throws, and that throw there, it didn't even reach the receiver. He just was like, "Oh, let me just get it out of his hand."
Yeah.
They kind of
Yep.
blitzed, and it was like, "Let me get this thing." It was like hot potato, and Steve Wilkes did a great job in terms of they were getting after him. They only got 2 sacks, but they were in his passing lanes, particularly in the second half. And then it's a story of 2 halves for the Niners, Mr. Irrelevant. And I don't want to ask you about him in a second. Brock Purdy, in the first half, he's 7 of 15 for 93 yards. He has no touchdowns, 1 interception, and -1 rushing yards. Everybody saying, oh, he's Mr. Relevant. This is the guy who we thought he was. He's not built for these situations. Well, Purdy turned this around in the second half, 13 of 16, 174 passing yards, 1 TD, no interceptions. And the key thing, Ryan, and a lot of people don't give him credit for, is his athleticism. He had 49 rushing yards. In particular, there were a couple plays I can remember in this game where he took off and he ran past some people and got some key first downs. So talk to me about Brock Purdy, and can he overcome this? I'm not saying a bias against it, but some people are saying, he's just not the man, and he's not a championship level quarterback. But I think he's past that point at this time in his career.
Yeah, I mean, when you go back to the Cleveland game, again, when he feels like he has to do too much, then he gets himself in trouble. And we talk about it all the time, Lloyd. When quarterbacks play within themselves, let the playmakers make the plays, he's that kind of quarterback. He's not a game manager. We're past game manager. He's got a
Yes.
little over a year and a half in the NFL under his belt now. As long as he doesn't panic and he gets it to McCaffrey and he gets it to Samuel and he gets it to Ayuk, and I mean Kyle Juszczyk, he's like one of the last fullbacks in the
And
National
he's the
Football
best
League.
one out there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Quality.
yeah, he had a great game. You get to Kittle. Again, when he distributes and gets it to the playmakers, he's fine. He got down 24-7 yesterday and he didn't panic. That's the one thing I saw out of him. He never panicked, and that's a good thing. When you have that kind of poise, you're facing adversity at home. He played. That was his first taste of, I think, uh, real intense playoff football to go to a Super Bowl, and he didn't cave. So that was a good
Yeah,
thing to see. And as far as the defense for San Francisco has got to try and figure it out here in the next 2 weeks, because if they play like they did against Detroit in the first half in the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes is gonna have a field day.
yeah, and this is a situation where Purdy's now 26-4 as a starter, so you know he's a winner, and he's getting the job done. And you talked about the litany of all-star type players they have at every level of this offense. Starting with Trent Williams, one of the best tackles in the game, probably a future Hall of Famer. The Niners, they stayed of course, as you said, and they just lean on the group, and they're saying to Purdy, yes, you're the quarterback, but you don't have to do everything on your own. You don't have to take it all on. And then Debo Samuel, he fought through that shoulder injury, 8 catches for 89 yards. He's the cog that makes this machine go. And then Christian McCaffrey, you could tell how happy he was to finally get to a Super Bowl. This guy finally gets out of Carolina, big trade. He had 20 rushes for 90 yards, 2 TDs, running tough between the tackles. I was going to knock against him when he was with Carolina. Could he run between the tackles? And he's just carrying the mail for this team. And it is going to be interesting to see how Shanahan can lock horns against Spagnuolo in the Super Bowl. And this Niners team did a great job in terms of, as you said, two halves. They turn around. I still tend to think, though, it's good a comeback as it was, that this Lions team, they're the one that's going to be, they're going to be stored the game here and say, okay, the Lions should have won this game. But, San Francisco found a way to get it done.
Well, and I'll say this about Detroit: it should be a learning experience that you never want to feel again. They have the nucleus, Lloyd. They got a two-headed monster at running back. Laporta's a beast now at tight end, replacing Hawkinson. Obviously,
Right.
they let Hawkinson go for a reason. Um, I'm on Ross St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Josh Reynolds. I mean, all these guys. You've got the nucleus. They might want to shore up their defense a little
Definitely.
bit in the offseason. Can they get back? Yes. But here's the thing now: it's a lot different being the hunted than being the hunter. So going into next season, there's going to be the same expectations, but now Detroit week in and week out next year is going to get everybody's best
Right.
shot because they're up here now. So
And that's what this Eagles team this year found out. I warned a lot of their fans going into this season. They were all like, "Oh, they'll be right back in the Super Bowl. They only lost by 3 points. The roster's young and the quarterback's looking great." Well, every season's different, and the quarterback this year, he had 23 TDs and 15 interceptions, and something was amiss with this squad. And now to the point where their head coach, everybody's like, "Oh, he was in the Super Bowl last year, but this year he's hanging on to his job by a thread." So we know the National Football League, things can change quickly, not for long league. So it's he said with the right name, Mickey said. Yeah, it's a not for long league. You feel for the Lions, but you also tip your cap to the Niners at the same time. Shanahan desperately wants that Super Bowl victory to join his father and kind of validate his career. But as we said, this is a tough assignment going against a Chiefs team that's starting to look a lot like those old Patriots teams. They are just a machine, and they're going to be ready. Andy Reid has already done his prep for the Super Bowl. He's been there so many times before. He knows exactly what to do. The Niners have been there before. As you said, they lost to the Chiefs. But this Niners group, we'll see if they can turn this thing around.
yeah, and it's a tall task for both teams, Lloyd. Uh, Kansas City is going to have to be fully prepared for the 49ers and vice versa. This is not going to be a blowout Super Bowl by any means. I don't see that at all. It's going to be a game within a game. Where are the matchups going to be? So again, San Francisco, nice comeback. Um, you just hope in San Francisco's case or Kansas City's case that they're just like, we're happy just to get back. I don't think that's the case for either team. San Francisco needs to make amends for the first time they play Kansas City, and Kansas City has a chance to repeat. So both of these teams are going to get each other's best shot. There it is.
Yeah,
Ryan F.
and
Kevin Midgette.
yeah, and the it's it's a situation where you can't become complacent. I remember when I was a kid, the Eagles beat Dallas Cowboys finally to make the Super Bowl in 1980,
Yep.
and they forgot they still had a game to play. Well, the Raiders, a team they had already beaten, were waiting for them, and they blew the doors off the Eagles, and that's what can happen. Lately, some of the Super Bowls have been a little bit closer, but for years the Super Bowls have been one-sided and blowouts because one team a lot of times is not mentally prepared to play in a game. Um, we'll see when they fly in and their schedule and all that stuff. But both of them are pretty close to Las Vegas, so their schedule should be what it is. And like I said, Andy Reid has so many guys on his staff that have been to so many Super Bowls, starting all the way back with the 2004 Eagles. A lot of these
Mm-hmm.
coaches and staff were already there, so they know what to do and they know how to get the job done. So it's going to be a fun watch. It's going to be fun to break this game down, and I think we had two quality opponents. A lot of times you'll get that underdog team, and you'll say, "Oh man, what are they doing here?" And then they spit the bit. Think about like the Carolina Panthers when they made it, and they went against the Patriots. The Carolina, you're like, "Oh, Carolina, why are they here?" Jake Delhomme, and then Jake Delhomme turns into Jake Delhomme. So we'll see how that turns out. And we have a few minutes left here. This is Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 102.9 The Game. I'm here with Ryan Neff. We're talking championship round, and I think we're going to talk a little coaching carousel in a minute. So, anything else you want to add, Ryan, in terms of the game? Obviously, you're probably leaning towards your Kansas City Chiefs. I know Angel says you're a homer, but what are you thinking in terms of? I'll call this the Legacy Bowl. What do you think?
I mean, San Francisco's open as a 1.5 point favorite. Look, they're the more balanced team, to be quite honest with you. I don't. I'll make my pick closer to game time, Lloyd. I'm not gonna make any
There
picks.
you go.
You know what I mean? So, I don't know. It's gonna be. Can Kansas City continue to stop the run? Because they haven't been able to. They're too inconsistent defensively and stuff. They're fantastic against the pass. They're one of
Yeah,
the top echelon teams defensively against the pass. It's when teams start to pound the rock and pound the rock and pound the rock, they get themselves in trouble because they don't make adjustments. Now they did in a Buffalo game. The first half, Buffalo ran all over them, and then they made the adjustment in the second half. They put 8 in the box and they shut it down. This week against Baltimore, they were not going to let the running game beat them. So,
yeah,
um, but on the
that's a
flip
good
side,
key.
yeah, on the flip side of it, how is San Francisco going to stop Rice? Going to stop Kelsey? Pacheco runs hard. They mix in CEH in there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So it's again. I'm going to say this again. Special teams, turnovers. Whoever can run the football the best.
Yeah, and watch out for Moody for the Niners. We know he's
Yeah.
capable of a miss. Now I'm going to talk about an area, a problem area I see for the Chiefs, and you're a Chiefs guy, so I'll ask you, Ryan, the bookend tackles. A lot of penalties by them. I think what is it, Donovan Smith or the what is it? The other tackle is the other um, is the most penalized player along the offensive line, and he's had his struggles all season,
Yeah.
starting with all the false starts against the Lions. So, what are we looking at when we look at the Chiefs and those bookend tackles? I think that's an area. You have Bosa, you have Chase Young on the other side. Can the Niners attack the Chiefs there? Is that a weakness?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen reports come out that they might bench Chase Young for the Super Bowl just because I guess they're unhappy with his inconsistent. He takes plays off. Um, you're gonna have to attack San Francisco at the middle in the running game. Um, Again, Kansas City against Baltimore, they attacked the middle of the defense. Uh, Again, 32 rushes for 89 yards. But the one thing Kansas City didn't do in this game was get away from the run game. So I think Kansas City has to attack the middle, running the football. And then, look, Kelsey's going to do his thing. If they decide to double Kelsey, Rashee Rice has proven time and time again, week in and week out, he can get separation. He's a nightmare for any defense. Um, and again, some of the other receivers for Kansas City are going to have to step up. And let's look. I'm going to plead to the other receivers like Marquez Valdez Scantling and some of the others. Do me a favor. Don't get the drops. He's in the Super Bowl. It looks like you finally have that fixed. And Kadarius Toney's out of the equation. So
Yeah, how about that? He goes all he basically calls Andy Reid a liar, and then Andy had to address it today about injuries and Tony's just been. I think the injury is a nice convenience because he's been benched. He's been a problem child all season for them, and they're moving on without him. Reid is the type of guy, and I remember back in the George Hegeman days with the Philadelphia Eagles. If he doesn't need a guy, he will jettison him, and that's what it looks like was having Kadarius Toney here. Um, he has stuck with it's Jawan Taylor is the tackle that I was talking about with all the false
that's what it
starts,
is. Yeah,
and he's had some difficulty. Andy has stuck with him, but him and Donovan Smith have had their difficulties, and we'll see if they're able to come over that. But um, yeah, and whether it's Kadarius Toney or it's Odell Beckham Sr., you know, stay off of social media. It doesn't help in terms of all that negativity, and you just look like a big goofball.
yeah. And as far as again, the social media age, Odell Beckham Sr., just keep your mouth shut. I didn't hear you bitching during the regular season. I didn't hear you bitching last week against Houston. Now all of a sudden that they lost, now you come out and you start
Yeah,
bitching. Yeah. So I mean, come on, man. I mean, it's just. And then as far as Kadarius Toney, look, you've had time and time again in Kansas City to get it corrected. You didn't do it. Now you're talking Kansas City is faking your injuries, that he's not hurt. Um, Look, take your ball and go home, and just be out of the equation for from now on, because Kansas City doesn't need any more distractions. And if Kadarius Toney wants to bitch about take it like the personal reason, fine with that. I'm fine with that. But look, Andy Reid and the organization has given you multiple chances to correct your dropsies, and you haven't done it. And you're a diva anyway, so just take your ball and go home.
yeah, and it's interesting because the Giants jettisoned him, and you know the Chiefs give him his opportunity. Actually made some nice plays last year in the Super Bowl, but this season has just been a disaster for him. And they'll move on from him. They'll find somebody else to step up in there. Brett Veach, Andy Reid do a great job with the front office and finding players, and also they'll just have Kelsey and guys like Justin Watson, who just always seems to get open at the right time. And then you have Rice, as you said, Rice is becoming a dominant young player, and he's not a pain in the ass. And when a receiver is a pain in the butt, it just ruins everything. It just spoils the whole brew. So and I think Andy Reid is just going to move forward, and they'll just kind of like they said he's going to be practicing with the team and go to. I can guarantee you that he's going to be in street clothes. He won't suit up for the game. They'll probably give him the Jeremy Shockey treatment. I don't know if you remember that.
Yep, yep,
Shockey,
yep,
when
yep,
the Saints won the Super Bowl, they put him up in the sky box. And they said, we don't need you. Go away. And
yep.
that's what could happen possibly to Kadarius Toney. So, Andy Reid is no nonsense, and I'm sure he said we're going to talk to him. So good luck with that, Kadarius Toney. And the first thing they'll do is say stay off of social media. Now, as we close the show, Ryan, Um, we know this. I'm in the Philadelphia area, and Angel is a big Eagles fan, so we always kind of focus on the Eagles. We did a lot early on. The Eagles, I don't know what the hell they're doing in terms of their coaching staff and everything. You have Sirianni, as we said, he comes back. He's kind of smug, and they're like, "Are you worried about your job?" Obviously, they got the doors blown off by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 32-9. Team never really showed up, losing 6 or 7 games to lose the season, and their fans and a lot of people are calling for Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman to make a change there. But all along, I was saying on Angel's show and my show and Rich's show, I was like, I know the Eagles, they're not going to get rid of this guy. They like having somebody that's controllable in that situation because Lurie and Howie Roseman, they're pulling all the strings, and Sirianni, and it's been confirmed now with these changes that are coming that he's just kind of a figurehead. And what do you think in terms of now they got Vic Fangio coming in from the Dolphins? He's going to be a defensive coordinator. If I'm Sirianni, I'm looking over my shoulder because this guy has head coaching in his background with the Broncos, and then they bring in Kellen Moore of all people to run the offense, some former Dallas Cowboys guy. Yes, he's coming from the Chargers, but I'm just wondering how all this is going to work. And to me, I think it's only going to get worse for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, I mean, Vic Fangio, when he was with the Saints, had a top five defense. Since then, it's sort of been too inconsistent with the Dolphins and, like you said, with the Broncos. Uh, and then you're talking Kellen Moore. Uh, what has he done? Uh, his offenses have been potent. Some of them have been potent, but it's not like he's been to a title game, and it's not like he's been to a Super Bowl. Not that I can recall. So, I mean, I've seen in the Philadelphia media and fans, it's 50-50. Some people are happy, some people aren't. And look, Sirianni and Howie Roseman sort of had to like try and make a splash. So, those are the two maybe best available out there to get. So, I think Lurie and Howie Roseman are giving Sirianni a chance to correct it at least going into next year. But if they start off like 2-4 or 2-5 or 3-6, I think Sirianni's gone. And I last year at this time, you wouldn't have even thought of that. So
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
yeah, I just think that they're going to give him next year to resolve it. But if they start slow and it's not looking good, they'll probably fire him. So he's kind of a lame duck coach.
yeah. He's on the last year of his contract. Well, they were not giving it to him, and they probably gave him the same ultimatum that they gave Doug Peterson a while back. They said, "Look, make major changes on your staff, or all of you are going." And he probably was like, "Oh, no problem. Yes, I'll do it." Because when deep down, I just think he's a guy. He's not an X's and O's guru, and he's just not a guy that has a strong plan, in my opinion. And you wonder, is he a leader of men? The way they limped home, he just kept banging his head into the brick wall. They're doing the same thing over and over again, and you wonder, is this ever going to change? And in my opinion, I just don't think it is. But Lurie and Roseman, they're determined to say, "Oh, we're right. This is our guy. We know what we're doing," and they didn't want to pull the plug. So crazy times for the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, they'll have the off season to kind of figure this thing out. But uh, that division, things always change every year. You saw Dallas win that division. They've not had a repeat winner since the Eagles in 03 and 04. And things are going to be changed, and they're going to have lots of change in terms of players. Kelsey's probably not going to be back. Fletcher Cox probably not going to be back. Brandon Graham, you wonder about him. So, and can some of these younger guys step up, particularly their 200 some $1 million quarterback who regressed this season. So, lots of change coming with the Eagles. We'll see about that. The other thing, Ryan, I want to touch on before we get out of here is Bill Belichick is probably not going to get a job. We saw Raheem Morris get the job with the Atlanta Falcons. I thought maybe that was a landing spot for him. He got 2 interviews down there, but Belichick, I think he is Not many, wins behind Don Shula at this point. I think it may be 17 or so. Um, but do you think Belichick is going to get an opportunity in the league again? And where does he go from here?
Well, I said this in previous shows. His message, I just don't think resonates with today's NFL athlete and NFL player. 20 years ago, a lot different. 10 years ago, it was a lot different. Defensively, players might listen to him. But as far as offensively and maybe special teams and other areas, it just doesn't resonate. It's a different athlete today. And you know as well as I do, Lloyd, we saw it in Milwaukee, with the Bucks. Their star player, if the star players got the clout, the star players have the clout.
Yeah, the
Coaches
NFL's going
don't.
that way.
And I just don't think he doesn't have the patience for today's player. It just doesn't work. And what does he have? What does he have left to prove? Nothing. You got 6 Super Bowl titles. Right off into the sunset. You're 71 years old. Enjoy the last third of your life. I guess he still has the fire to coach, and I just don't see him going anywhere to be a coach because it just doesn't resonate anymore.
Yeah, and you know what it is too, Ryan. He's very stubborn. He's
Yep.
set in his ways, as you're saying, and he has to have total control. Even though he does, he says he doesn't. He wants to pick all the players and make all the moves. And you're right. He has not learned, especially on the offensive side, how to win. Yeah, defensively, he still can kind of get done, but it's just like he's not going to change his ways. And uh, you wonder what got done with all those years in the Patriots, from 2000 to 2012 or so. Is that going to resonate today? And these young guys, they want somebody that's going to relate to them, somebody they knew from their college days. I know you have the college show. You look at that's what the Chargers are trying to do. Bring that infusion of the college game to the National Football League. Bring in a guy like Harbaugh, someone that's recruited these young guys, get to talk to them. The Belichick, he's just trying to have a lot of control over the situation, and it's who has the coach, the owner's ear. And a lot of these owners are seeing, what the league is moving in another direction. So,
Yeah.
we'll see how Belichick, if he can turn this around real quick. Harbaugh, what do you think? He's going to bring Horowitz over from the Ravens as his GM. Uh, are they going to be able to turn this Chargers team around? Because Brandon Staley's situation is looking a lot like I think the Eagles may end up. He was kind of a lame duck this year, and it all blew up in his face.
Yeah, Harbaugh going to called it a couple of months ago. Best possible case scenario for him was the Chargers, just because Justin Herbert's his type of quarterback. He's the prototypical NFL quarterback, the throwback. Uh, Now, do I think they're a Super Bowl contender? No. It's going to take couple years at least, for Harbaugh to put that roster together. Do I think they could be a wild card team next year? Absolutely. Harbaugh will make a difference. I've said this before. You can call him quirky, you can call him unusual, out of the box thinking, but the man can coach. Everywhere he's been successful, and I think the Chargers just got exponentially better with him as the coach.
Yeah, and he already said I want that Lombardi ring, and did a great job. Michigan undefeated season, but there's always that cloud of the NCAA hanging over his head. They're going to suspend him, and there's just a lot of rules around college football, and you talk about a changing atmosphere with the NIL and the transfer
Yep.
portal. It's just a lot for a coach to deal with. So. I do agree with you that Harbaugh is going to probably have some success there with the Chargers. We'll see. But obviously, the team everybody's talking about in that division is the Kansas City Chiefs. We got the Chiefs are going to play the Niners coming up in Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas. So we'll continue talking about that on Lloyd Vance's Inside Football 1029. The game with Broad Street South Network coming along as we move towards the big game. Obviously, this week we'll talk a little bit about Senior Bowl. What went on down there, get you ready for the draft. But it's going to be all eyes on that Super Bowl matchup in the next couple of weeks, and we'll talk about that right here. Thanks for joining with us. Look forward to talking to you next week on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game and the Broad Street South Network. Thanks for Ryan for joining, pitch hitting, and Angel for your great production. Talk to you later.